Welcome to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. He's Emil Calamino. I'm Chad Wilson. We are ready to launch into week number 8 of the college football season, week 7 NFL football season. Things are humming right along here, and we've got a lot to get to on the show. USC Notre Dame, did it go how you thought? What are the Jets doing, winning without Aaron Rodgers? Oregon and Washington, one of the big games in the Pac-12, which has seen a resurgence this year on its way out the door. We'll talk about that. Is Georgia, the number one team in the country, in trouble? And is a certain team that got a lot of hype in the beginning part of this season also in trouble? We'll talk about that and more. Plus, we've got great picks that we need to get to you. I had, I guess, what you would consider a predictable bad week here, meaning I was so hot, was bound to catch some cold water. My friend here picked up the slack, so we'll get to that. We'll recap that as well as give our picks for this week. I'm planning the big comeback. So I'm glad that you're here to check out all this stuff. If this is your first time here or you haven't had a chance to do that already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, whether you are watching us on YouTube or listening on one of your podcast listening devices, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, whatever your weapon of choice is there. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Don't you forget, because you don't want to miss out on the next great show like this one we're going to lay down for you right now. Emil, I know you were front and center Saturday night, leaning into the television, watching the annual clash between USC and Notre Dame. This thing did not go the way you and other Trojan fans would have had it go. I was very surprised by the final score. I did think Notre Dame was a real live opportunity.
You like Notre Dame, and I wouldn't have been surprised had Notre Dame won. I was surprised by you know how easily they won. I mean, USC got close with about 10 minutes left. It was 31-20, and then once that kid broke the kickoff for Notre Dame, the floodgates opened, and that was over.
Yeah, and we've had some discussions about this. It started with Caleb Williams. I know I've said, a couple of weeks ago, I'm not sure his game translates to the NFL. It seems a little bit of like the Colin Kaepernick that lost his job in San Francisco. It worked in a system like the one that was being run by Jim Harbaugh for whatever reason. But once Harbaugh was gone, Colin Kaepernick was playing backyard, schoolyard football. And that's what Williams has looked like on several occasions in the chance that I've had to watch him this year. But in watching this game, Emil, that's not really what I got. I'm going to go deeper here. I am really thinking here that this stuff's on Riley. You've got a defense that's not very physical. It's not working. You've given up 40-plus points in 3 straight games. That's not the stuff a college football playoff or potential national champ makes. And yes, you have an offense that's fun. You have a quarterback that's fun, but fun can only last for so long at USC because they're a place that has championship trophies. Maybe it would work across the city at UCLA where they can make no such claims, but at USC, that's going to wear out, Emil. And I'm not seeing a program being built, albeit this is only 2 years in, but these guys that are in love with offense and not so much interested in the other parts of being a head coach and building a program, they have a short life. They have a short shelf life at a place like USC that's used to winning championships.
I will say this: as far as the way he conducts himself, I like Lincoln Riley. But as you get more information on something, your opinions can change, right? And I'm starting to believe, watching what's happening here to my team, is that maybe he left Oklahoma knowing that his jig was up there, if that makes any sense. Oklahoma is very similar to USC. They're a blue blood program. Each school has 7 Heisman Trophy winners. We have 8 when Reggie gets his back. Oklahoma's won 7 national championships. USC's won 11. So very similar schools. He was doing the same stuff at Oklahoma. Granted, he made 3 college football playoffs. I get it. But they knew they weren't beating teams like Georgia and Alabama because they couldn't stop them.
Right.
And I'm starting to wonder if he just realized the old, I'll only get away with this so long here, and somebody has a check out here for $110 million for 10 years and a nice house up on a hill overlooking the ocean. I'm going.
I'm long of the theory that one of your best skills in the workplace in your career is knowing what jobs not to take and also knowing when to exit from a job. So you may indeed be right there. He looked down the road and said, hey, this winning but coming up short can only last so long at a place like Oklahoma. There's some maybe perhaps some other schools where I could go do that and they would be happy with it. But at some point, and maybe he heard some murmurs that he felt like exactly like what you said, this is not gonna go over well if I continue on this path. But lo and behold, here comes a USC with the check, and USC is Oklahoma, but by golly, they're offering me a lot of money, and I could go over there and just kind of see how this thing goes.
So those first couple of years, he's got the perfect job, so to speak. They're 4-8, so he goes 11-3 last year. Yeah, you always have some people that are unrealistic, but generally speaking, the fan base is like, "Hey, he went 11-3. That's bad. We were 4-8."
Yeah, I'm seeing an offensive line that's not up to snuff. I'm seeing a defensive front that doesn't dominate the way a USC front should dominate. In fact, that entire unit back there, talking about the defense, is not playing like something that's going to win a championship or bring a championship to USC anytime soon. There's not a lot of competitive excellence there, and it doesn't seem to be trending in the right direction. And you have this insane loyalty to your defensive coordinator that even after people spoke, and I think the more people,
two people though, the defensive coordinator, and he brought the strength and conditioning coach, and that's bigger than most fans realize. I know how important that is.
Yeah, I would say that's the most important coach on any staff.
Yeah.
But why are bullets being thrown in his direction? I know you follow USC football closely.
They're just, my friend, turn on an Alabama, a Georgia game.
We can't use that as a measuring stick, Emil.
Listen,
it's not.
I don't care, because just like Ohio State, they get athletes that look like SEC athletes. USC used to do that. These kids, I told you, their offensive line looked like he went down to Huntington Beach, picked out 5 kids playing volleyball that are like 6'6", 240. He said, here, bench for a while. They got up to 275. They don't look like offense. They don't look nasty. I want guys with
that's
sweat.
not the offense. He's not really trying to move people. He's just getting away. Don't sack my quarterback. Let him throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, I want guys that have sweat coming through the pants. Like the kind where you couldn't even imagine having cleaned the locker room.
Why does this man sound like John Madden right now?
But, am I wrong? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see these tall, skinny kids getting pushed around. That is not a USC offensive line. No way. Not with, it's just not.
Listen, I'm giving you, a little heat here, but I don't disagree. There's a certain amount of physicality that has been lost just as a whole at this program. And I think that's going to be a problem now moving forward, because yes, you just got trounced by Notre Dame. So you've got some stuff going on in your head. Doesn't get tougher this week because you're facing another tough customer in terms of physicality in Utah, albeit you're getting them at home. But then along the way, after you get a break against Cal, you're getting Washington, Oregon, and UCLA, who somehow has decided, even in their powdered blue uniforms, to be a team that wants to play defense this year. You might end up winning 1 or 2 more games if you're USC, and then now you've got a problem, Lincoln Riley.
Now you got a problem, and I'm going to tell you something. It's not to pick on programs. You made a good point, right? You can have a fun coach, an old friend, Lane Kiffin. You can have Lane down at Mississippi, and Lane's fun. He's going to have a good offense. You're going to score points. He's going to give you some great quotes. Some years he'll go 10-3, and that's cool. You can have a fun coach like Chip Kelly, even though you're complimenting his defense this year at UCLA. They go 9-4 last year. That's nice.
Right.
UCLA won 9 games. You can't have a fun coach at USC unless there's banners being hung. And coaches don't hang banners.
You lose 3 or 4 games this year. You lost 3 last year. Let's say you lose Caleb Williams this year, as some NFL team decides to make him 50-50 partners. Yeah, he's asking for a piece of an NFL franchise, so maybe someone does that and he leaves. Now what? You don't have your all-time bailout Superman at quarterback, albeit somehow Lincoln Riley seems to be able to find the next guy and develop him. But you're going to...
Here's the problem. You're hitting on a big point here. And this is what I've told other USC fans. We have a bunch up here, believe it or not. you got to look at this. Reminds me now, I'm not comparing him. He's a better coach than Clay Helton. But if you remember in 2016 and 2017, you had a whole chunk of the USC fan base kind of giving Clay a pass because at the time, Sam Darnold bailed him out. Okay. He had a number 3 finish the year they beat Penn State. They were 10-3. The following year, they finished like 10th. They lost to Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. They were 11-3. Darnold was masking a lot of the problems within the program because no matter what you want to say about his pro career, he was a great college quarterback. Okay. Now you got Williams doing that. And I'll even argue one point with you. You keep saying about his game to the pros. I would encourage you to go watch a few games last year when USC had a very good offensive line. His game was different, and I noticed it. He did make more rhythm throws last year. Now, I'm not saying he didn't make plays outside the pocket, but he wasn't doing what I call the schoolyard stuff. He was running, hitting big throws. Their offensive line was good last year. This year, a lot of what we're seeing is a function of he takes his third step and he's got pressure all around him. I mean, and you saw it probably on Saturday.
Yeah, I did see that. I can't say I didn't. Not overwhelmingly slow, so, but you know what, Emil, they're not bullying anyone in the trenches, and that is, I'm not just talking on Saturday night. I'm talking about throughout the games that they've played this year, and this includes San Jose State and Nevada, and a game against Colorado, who's, still trying to build things up. So there's just not a physical nature to the program. And that's kind of some of what you do when you're a full-on program builder, developer. And what we have in Lincoln Riley is a quarterback developer and an offensive coordinator. And I have just always been leery of those type when you want them.
So what happens next year? Your quarterbacks next year are a great kid, Miller Moss, would probably start at 50 schools in the country, but he's not what I would call elite, okay? And then you got Malachi Nilsson, who was a 5-star, but hasn't seen the field this year.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to have that
Riley,
bailout.
yeah. So let's say you're 8-4 and you're Riley. You can't play Nelson, a kid that's never had you got to win next year. So you're in the portal. He's going to be doing his next Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts deal because you can't start a redshirt freshman that hasn't seen the field if you're coming off an 8-4 season.
Absolutely. And you're going to the Big Ten where you're going to run into some rugged physical teams, and maybe you can out-athlete some of them, but you're not going to out-athlete and out-rugged Michigan and Ohio State. That's just not going to happen. So if you're not devoted and committed to building some kind of physicality in your program and developing your program as a whole and not making your major focus on just getting Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and trying to score as many points as possible, you may struggle mightily in the Big Ten, and that's gonna start some noise in Los Angeles, and you probably won't get to the end of that contract. But he seems to be wise in how he picks his jobs, a la Urban Meyer. So, I'm kind of thinking, what would be the next destination? Do you go to another place that has trophies in the past that you could come in and be a savior for? Or do you just now start going to the schools where they'll be happy to have you rolling up points every week, exciting the fan base, and they'll be happy to go 10-3, 9-4? Is that what you start?
I always felt he was a like your old friend Klinger. His special assistant. I always felt like Lincoln was going to be
Kingsbury. You mean?
So yes, I Klinger as I call him. I always felt like he was going that route. Even when he went to USC, I never thought he'd see the 10 years. I always felt like Riley was going to be a guy that whether they won a championship or not was gonna be wanted to be known as an offensive genius. And in the NFL, we know that's the trend right now. Bring in offensive guys that can fix quarterbacks because it's such an important position. And I think he'll end up in the NFL unless he totally crushes his reputation in the next 2 or 3 years, which I think he's smart enough not to do that. So
yeah, I think what he does offensively, though, is probably the NFL might end up trending away from that. So that might even be a disaster as well. But if a guy goes up, coaches in the NFL, but he's really a college coach, so he gets his experience, like what Saban has done and what some other guys, and then you come back down, maybe you're better for it. The guys that get 10 years, The guys that see the end of a 10-year contract and re-up are the program builders, the Nick Sabans, the Kirby Smarts, the Dabo Swing,
Yeah.
the Urban Meyers. They build an entire program. They're not the OCs. They're not the play callers. Why their background might be from one side of the ball or the other. They're not overly involved in one side or the other in terms of offense.
They're the CEO. Let's go to blast to the past for some of our fans that are our age. Joe Paterno was the ultimate CEO at Penn State. He knew.
Well, he missed the detail or two there at the end.
He missed a detail or two, but let's not do what's so fashionable in this day and age. Let's not abuse a guy who was loved by players and did a hell of a lot more good.
No, much respect for Joe Paterno.
And there was a guy that knew what jock straps they were going to wear. Okay, he was the CEO of that program. He wasn't doing offense and defense. He was running up and down the sidelines yelling at refs. That was Joe Paterno. So to me, Nick Saban, guys like that, I respect that because they're running the program. And before we put this one to bed and move on, the telltale sign, and you follow recruiting more than I do, at USC right now is look at the recruiting battles they're losing, where they're not getting the linemen, they're not getting the offensive tackles that they would normally get out west, they're not getting the defensive ends, they're losing battles for kids like that. And what their classes end up being is a lot of transfer portal linemen coming in and a bunch of athletes. So they'll have a high recruiting grade because they'll get the receivers, they'll get the quarterbacks and push that grade up. Oh, they have the 7th best recruiting class. But if you look at the mix of the class, they're not elite defensive ends, defensive tackles, offensive tackles. They're all athletes. And then they're filling in the roster with guys in the portal at the other positions.
All right. Well, we'll get to see what's going to be here for USC in the coming weeks. As the schedule turns out, the meat of this thing is at the end, and they're entering in that meat with not a lot of bread to wrap around it. You're coming off of a 28-point loss to Notre Dame, so we'll see how mentally they can stack up against the rest of that. Taking a switch real quick over to the NFL, have you seen what the Jets are doing? They're playing really good football without one Aaron Rodgers. Now, I've seen credit getting tossed around for last week's win with Aaron. Because Aaron Rodgers was around and he said a couple things into the headset. I don't know how true that is, but whether people care to recognize it or not, or you haven't been paying attention, Zach Wilson's played pretty decent football over the last 3 weeks. So that begs the question, did they kind of cast Zach Wilson aside too soon? Is that what we're doing these days? Does no one have any patience? Or was it the right move to bring in Aaron Rodgers?
I think he had a change mentally at the 1 quarter mark, the first quarter of that Kansas City game. If you remember, they won the first game of the year. He didn't play well, but they won. They beat Buffalo. Then they got crushed by the Cowboys and somebody else. The Patriots nipped them. The Cowboys beat them pretty good. They were 1-2 going into that Kansas City game, and they were down 17-0. And he had what I call an F it moment. He just said F it because I'm not playing well, and I just think he started letting it rip. And sometimes you have those moments in sports. You've seen it with pitchers. They're thinking too much, and all of a sudden they just say, "Screw it! I throw 98. I'm going to throw it down the middle." And next thing they know, their entire psyche changes. And I think that happened for him in that game. He got some confidence, and lo and behold, they lose that game close, but they get a perfect opponent the next week, Denver, who they rally behind the cause of the things that were said about their offensive coordinator by the former Denver coach, by Sean Payton. They go out, they play well in Denver, get a win, and now all of a sudden, the Jets have something going.
Well, for Zach Wilson right now, playing well means just not turning the ball over and making stupid reads, perhaps making the proper third down throw. He's not lighting it up in terms of stats. He's under 200 yards in each of the last 2 games. Probably the best of those 3 games was the loss to Kansas City, but he's doing enough to let the rest of the team take over. You've got a good running back in Brees, and you play pretty good defense. So I don't know if it's enough for the Jets to get in. Emil, do you buy any of this story about Aaron Rodgers possibly returning for this season?
I was going to talk to you about that. Listen, I've had some serious injuries in my life. I never did an Achilles. I've been told from a basketball and football perspective, it's probably the worst injury you can have in terms of your explosiveness and your ability to run. I don't know. I know he's a quarterback and he doesn't have to run that much, but I don't know how a 39-year-old guy is coming back from that injury in 4 months.
Well, mobility is a part of his game. He does have a great arm, and he's one of the best throwers historically of the football that this game has ever seen. But mobility is a part of his game. I personally don't see how a guy can come back from an Achilles injury same season. I just don't see that happening.
Well, I think part of that, between you and me, he's a weird dude, but he's also a smart dude. So I think he sees it as, if I tell these guys, I think he's playing some mental gymnastics with his own teammates. If I tell these guys, I think I can come back.
They'll hang it.
Maybe they don't, yeah, maybe they don't quit on the season. And if I don't make it back, so what? We have a good season. What's the harm? I mean, it's not like he's lying. I'm sure he is trying to come back, but
Yeah,
you
and I'm
know,
sure for Aaron Rodgers that he doesn't want them to have a completely bomb of a season, and you get ideas of let's just blow this whole thing up. That would be bad news for him if he's still trying to play ball. So yeah, that's something
and
definitely.
I want to touch on one point you made about Zach Wilson because I think it's important that we look at let's look at Zach Wilson as a football field, okay? And he's on his own 10-yard line. That's where he was 4 weeks ago, okay? He's throwing the ball to the guys in the wrong color uniforms. Now he's getting closer to midfield. And I think for a while, as a fan of the Jets, you got to be happy if Zach Wilson is doing exactly what he's doing. 180, 220 yards a game, no big turnovers or screw ups, manage the game, let the kicking game and defense take over, and you're going to try to win some games like that if you're the Jets. Maybe a few weeks of that, he gets some confidence that you can start attacking deeper down the field and running some riskier stuff because you start to trust him. He's got to trust himself first.
I
So
feel
I
pretty
think
solid that when the Jets decided to draft Zach Wilson as high as they did, it was not to get a game manager, but here we are. And as long as he's doing that, I guess the rest of the team.
What is this? This is his second or third year.
This would be year 3, I believe.
Okay. I mean, this is a guy who's probably, I could go look, 23, 24 years old. We're too quick to, because it's happened more frequently in the last decade, to assume these guys should come in and just dominate the league. I mean, years ago, you wouldn't say, oh, guy's in his third year, he stinks. I think you got to let this guy try to, hopefully, he has a little bit of a run of some winning and some game management. And then they can take him to the next step, which is, hey, you got to start making some more difficult throws in the red zone because we can't keep kicking field goals.
True. Well, Jets and Zach Wilson and how they progress through the rest of this season is something I'm sure that will stay on the tip of our tongues, and it's continue to make headlines one way or another. Speaking of coming to quick conclusions, you brought this up. I've recognized the same thing. I'm watching the Los Angeles Chargers be mediocre once again this year. And since he's come into the league, Justin Herbert has received godlike upliftment, if I could use that word, from media members. And, the media members tend to influence the fans at large. So he gets a pass really on everything. And I'm not here to say he's not playing well, he sucks, etc., whatever the case may be. But his mediocrity there. And when Justin Herbert does not perform in a game, or once again for another season, the way people think they should, as a team, they tend to want to blame it on Brandon Staley, who does enough to draw some criticism, the ownership, the offensive coordinator, which is now Kellen Moore, who came from the Cowboys, and the receiving core and everything else. It's just not Justin Herbert. But when Dak Prescott one hops an out route on third down, Dak sucks, and he'll never take the Cowboys anywhere. He's no Troy Aikman, and he should get the hell off of my football team. Why is that, Aim? As a Cowboys fan, I need to understand why guys like, and Jalen Hurts.
We deal in honest. We always have dealt in honesty here. There's a couple things. The NFL quarterback, right, traditionally has been a big, tall, white guy.
Correct.
Generally, right?
Which is what Justin Herbert is.
He looks like an NFL quarterback. I mean, in the minds of the NFL fan over the age of 35,
Mhm.
that's what you pictured the quarterback looking like, right? A 6'5", 6'6" guy that can spin the football. He looks like it. So he tends to get that pass. Funny, we were talking about something else the other day, and I did a little research. And if I told you this in 1987, you would say not going to happen. Do you know 15 of the 32 NFL starting quarterbacks are minorities right now?
I do, because you put that out there,
I
but it's
told you
not a
that.
shocking number because, yeah, you just start to realize that this is, this kind of direction we're going in.
Right.
The three top picks this year, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and
Right.
Bryce are all minorities. So this is where we're moving.
But it ties in. I do think there's a little bit, even if people don't realize it. I'm not sure it's intentional. I just think because he looks like an NFL quarterback, what you picture, and he has the arm, and he does throw a pretty ball. He spins the ball nice, and I think he gets more of a pass. He's a high first round pick. Dak comes in fourth round pick, plays for the Cowboys. So the Cowboys are like your Yankees. They're a very divisive team. You either love them or you hate them. And when people hate them, they love to dance on the head of somebody, even if it's not
I
fair.
feel like some of these shots are coming from Cowboys fans with
Well,
regards.
let's be honest. You and I were talking during the game Monday night, and you saw some of the things I see. How do I say it in football? Dak seems to process things slowly sometimes. And what I mean by that is you see when he takes his drop, and there's guys that they can feel the pocket breaking down, and they either pull that ball down or they get rid of it. Dak takes some sacks that I almost feel like I'm watching a car wreck in slow motion.
I will agree. There seems at times to be a lack of urgency in that pocket, a lack of urgency to go through the play fakes, hurry up and set up and find a guy. Yeah, he's not Brock Purdy when it comes to that.
Troy Aikman was getting frustrated even on the one play. It was in the third quarter. And they sent Ferguson, the tight end, on a seam route right down the center of the field. And Aikman almost lost himself like he was in the room. And he goes, "Put it on him." In other words, like, you're a pro quarterback, man. The guy's running.
Yeah, you got to wonder if,
Center.
like, the boogeyman's in his head. I think we all remember when your guy, Sam Darnold, was in that Monday Night Football game and he said he was seeing ghosts. You don't even have to be on social media when you're the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, and the level of vitriol, I should say,
Yeah.
is coming from fans, media members. You don't even have to be on there. People will bring it to you, and it'll find its way into you. So maybe he's hearing some of those voices, but I just find it, I wouldn't even say odd, because I realize he's the quarterback of the Dallas
He's a
Cowboys.
good guy. Like, listen, I don't kid around on here. If you read a little bit about stuff he does, and you do, so he's a good guy. Like, he's well liked in the Dallas community. He's a good person. So as a fan, not just of the Cowboys, but of sports, I wouldn't mind seeing him do well, even if I wasn't a Cowboy fan. I think I get frustrated with him as a fan because I feel like there's meat on the bone. I feel like he's got more. I saw him play at Mississippi State, and I feel he needs to get one of those F it moments soon, where he just says, "Well, F it, let it rip." I mean, I feel like he's thinking too much.
And perhaps that will happen, and we'll see, what transpires if indeed that does happen, man. But God, when you are the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, you can't have an off night, you can't have an off quarter, you can't have an off series, because people just absolutely lose their.
Well, let me bring a guy up who doesn't he seems to get a lot of love. I was watching the Jets Eagles game on Sunday, and whoever was doing the game, and I forget who the color analyst was, but he kept comparing Jalen Hurts to a young Russell Wilson when Wilson was winning a Super Bowl at the Seahawks. And I'm saying I've watched a lot of Eagle games this year, and I started looking up stats, and lo and behold, Hurts has 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Now,
That was
you want
interesting that you brought that up. I didn't realize that that's what the guy was.
Yeah. Now you want to look at a guy, right, whose career, first year in the league, he was a project. Second year in the league, they started him. They got to the playoffs, lost to Brady, I think, in Tampa that year. Not really good stats. Showed some promise. Then he took off last year. I mean, last year, he takes his team to the Super Bowl and gets the big contract now. So there's been one special year amongst 2 to 3 right now at this point in the year, average to poor years. And you're looking, go, well, why is there nothing coming his way? I mean, this is a guy making what, 50 million bucks a year? He's got like an 84 quarterback rating.
Well, and he's not the Cowboys quarterback. However, and still, they went to a Super Bowl. So there's something to be said for that. It does buy you a certain amount of break.
Time. It buys you time. It buys you a benefit of the doubt.
If this year continues the way that it is, stat wise, and then he packs another one on top of that, I think the noise will come.
I think he's got his career. I feel, I told you this, we were talking off air. I think his career can go one of two ways at this point. Either this is just a bad stretch of games, he fixes it, he comes back, he plays much like he did last year, his career takes off, or he's RG3. RG3 came into the league. A lot of fans forget the first year Washington ran some goofy stuff with him that the league hadn't seen yet, and they won the NFC East with a team that wasn't supposed to win the NFC East. He hurt the knee in the playoff game. But then the next year when he came back, knee injury aside, the league kind of figured out what they were doing, and it became more difficult. I think the Eagles did some stuff last year with Hurts that was different. I mean, he's a big guy. He can take hits. They were running him 15 times a game. We talked about on the show. I made comments like, man, I don't know if I'd be letting my quarterback go on 15 design runs every game. I mean, so maybe they're figuring it out. I don't know. We'll have to, I mean, only time will tell. He'll decide which is which.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you on that. And of course, we'll get a chance to see exactly how that plays out. So, I don't know what else to say there on that one.
No, just it's something to consider. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I want to slide to this, Emil. Late Friday night, and I know you love the Friday night Pac-12. Yeah, the Pac-12 goodness. I know you love that stuff. Colorado. If there's one thing Colorado's done, they've done a number of things, but if there's one thing you can hang your hat on with Colorado this year, is that they will have you engaged for the full 60 minutes and then some of the game. You're going to get the pregame warm up, all the antics and everything else that goes with that. And then you will occasionally get extra football afterwards because you got a couple of, extra inning games with Colorado. And we got another one of those. Now, Emil, I wasn't paying attention at first. It's Stanford. Okay. Stanford.
You saw the score rolling in.
And I'm seeing the scores come in. I'm like, okay, this is going how it should go.
Right.
And then I turn around. It's like 29-21. Let's get over there and find out what the heck is going on. And Emil, I proceeded to see this wide receiver for Stanford, who I had no idea even existed. But Alec Ayamanor goes for 294 yards. Emil, it didn't matter who they put over there because they sent Travis Hunter to take on to line up in front of this kid, and it didn't stop him from doing what he needed to do. They made the Stanford quarterback look like he was that guy, Ashton Daniels. I don't know how much he's done this year. I'm going to be honest, haven't paid a whole lot of attention to Stanford football. No good reason for me to do that. I will want to see what these guys doing, but it didn't matter. Your former Cowboy Omar Stoudemire, his son was one of the corners there. He's a freshman. He was doing him in. I think he's the guy that got beat for the 95-yard touchdown. Travis Hunter goes over there. It doesn't stop.
It doesn't matter.
And Stanford goes up and down the field. They proceed to score. What was that? 36, 43 points over the last, 3 quarters.
It was 29-0 at the half.
Biggest comeback in the school's history, maybe in Pac-12 history. And they end up getting a 46-43 win, Emil. And, of course, all of the Dion haters and the people tired of hearing about the Colorado Buffaloes and Primetime and Shedeur and Shiloh and seeing his entire family on a commercial who are just sick of the Aflac commercial and everything else.
I like the Aflac. I like him and Nick.
Well, they're not everyone agrees with you on that. They're all out in droves with their tiki torches, whether it's Twitter or TikTok, and they're all coming for his head. With that said, Emil, this team right now is sitting at 4-3.
Right.
At the beginning of the year, I was asked, we do a preview show.
Sure.
What
When
do
you're
I
talking, I'm going to pull this up.
Yeah, what do I think Colorado's going to do this year? And I had them at 4-7 on the season.
You had them at 4-8. I had them at 5-7. So let's have some fun here. They're 4-3, right? Here is their remaining schedule. You ready?
Yes.
Saturday the 28th. So they have a bye week, I think, this week. No, yes, they have a bye week. Then they go at UCLA.
Tough, Emil. That's a tough game.
Right now, I'm going to say that's a loss. Next week, home against Oregon State. What do you think?
Tough. L.
L. Now, fans who aren't paying attention to football after dark might think we're crazy here, but the next game's Arizona. That's a tough game.
Arizona is a 4-3 football team with losses to Washington, who is arguably the best
by
team.
A score, 31-24.
Yep. Lost to USC by 2 points. USC's tough. We all know that. And in the early part of the year, when they weren't sure who the hell they were, they went down to Mississippi State and lost. Those are their 3 losses.
But in overtime, they have 3 losses. 2 of them are in overtime, and 1 is by 7 to Washington. So that's another game. Right now, if you ask me to pick that game, it's at Colorado. I'm still taking Arizona.
Correct. Carrying on.
Okay. At Washington State.
November 17th in Pullman, Washington.
Okay. And then at Utah. So basically what you're trying to prove to the audience is you might still be right.
I don't see a win on the schedule. They may very well pull something off because I won't doubt Deion's ability to motivate the team. But now you've lost 3 of your last 4, and morale might be switching a little bit. We know public perception is starting to swing. They may very well end up 4-8, Emil. And of course, you know what? As I sit here and look at it, I was really only thrown off by the TCU win, and that was just the whole hype and buildup of Colorado. And you start off all these teams start off with the right mindset at the beginning of the year, and TCU is a little weaker. But so far, the rest of this has gone the way that I've expected it to go.
And you know what masked it a little bit? Okay, the Oregon game, they got a pass on the Oregon loss because it was at Oregon, and Oregon played a great game. The USC game masked a little bit what was going on, because if you look at that game, that score is 48-21 with 2 minutes left.
They were getting handled.
They were getting handled. And as you always explained to me years ago when we first met, it's going on 20 years, you got to understand in football, once you let up, it's almost impossible to get it back. And I think USC, already not being a great defensive team, they let up kind of like, yeah, we can keep scoring. We'll score 65 if we want to. And Colorado kind of made it look, they window dressed the score a little bit, but they were getting handled.
And we now know that USC doesn't have a defense. So,
right.
Yeah, Emil, they could close this year out with a 6-game losing streak and end up.
I had to watch the highlights on Saturday. I went to a place up in Vermont. Hadn't been really nice for anybody who wants to go. Great state, Vermont. Very picturesque. Big mountains. As far as the East Coast goes, the biggest mountains are on the East Coast or in Vermont. But, and you'll know this joke when I tell you, it's as close to Boise, Idaho as you'll ever get.
Yes. I know what you mean.
That's an inside joke.
I know what you mean. As someone who's been to Boise, Idaho, dressed in the other team's colors. Yes. I totally understand that. And Emil,
I got back to the room. The game was on Friday night, and I looked. The score was like 14-0, maybe 10. Denise said to me, "You gonna watch the Colorado game?" She knew it was on. I said, "It's 14." I looked. It's 22-0. I said, "Nah, I'm going to bed. I'm tired." So I go to bed. It's 22-0, right? I get up. I'm expecting the final score to be like 56-17. I'm looking. I'm like 46-43.
That's the
so now I have to go find the highlights. I'm like,
yeah, that's the exact look I had. The Colorado State game where I had to get up early the next morning and went to sleep, and they somehow pulled that one out. Folks forget they're on their way to losing the Colorado State game. And I'm not saying these things to take anything away from Deion Sanders. God knows I love the guy. He was one of my idols growing up as I started to transition over to playing cornerback. And I love everything that he did at Jackson State and what he is now currently doing at Colorado, both on the field and on the field. Just the kind of faith that he's building, the stuff that he's doing with the young men and building them into young men, knowing only a handful of these guys are going to even have the opportunity to play at the next level. I'm merely saying this to you and to our audience to say, you can't have unrealistic expectations. I've been doing this for a while, been watching football for a while. When you come in as a brand new coach and you're brand new to Power 5 football, you're brand new to all these things. Yes, I know there's a transfer portal. You got to have realistic expectations on turning a 1-11 football team. And it's not just a 1-11 football team. Emil, the years before that weren't good. They had just become perennial losers and think you're just going to overnight wave a wand on this thing and turn them into potential college football playoff entrants or even both.
But that's the media. Remember, the media is making their money getting big ratings from Colorado. So they're going to,
boy, are they.
Yeah, so they're going to play that card as long as they can. If you remember our preseason show, you picked 4 wins. I said 5. And I said, listen, if they go 5-7, and I forgot how I phrased it, you can go back and look. I said, the season's been a wild success. When you're 1-11, if you go 5-7, you had a really, really good year. You're trending in the right direction. And I think where the public doesn't understand Deion, and in some cases, I don't know why they just don't understand sports. Deion is smart enough to know that they were not anywhere near a championship caliber team. The stuff he does, I believe, and I think you would agree, is to build his own team up. He took over a program that was a doormat. They're 1-11. The first challenge is getting them to believe that they can win. So he's going to say some things that get people's they're going to raise an eyebrow, but he's doing a lot of it for his own team. He's a smart guy. He's in the NFL Hall of Fame. I mean, he knows football.
Yeah, I'm wondering, and Emil, I'm going to say this. Even if they end the season on a 6-game losing streak, which, as we just laid out, could potentially happen, the season is still a success for Colorado. You brought a great amount of attention to the program. Tickets were sold. Merchandise was sold. From a financial standpoint, this was a windfall for the program. The GA, not the GA, but the athletic director can now afford to pay the salary that he had promised Deion. And they're in the national consciousness. This will have effects in terms of recruiting and also, the ability to appear in primetime games down the road. So even if a 6-game losing streak is what happens here, it's a successful season. I am just wondering what the press conferences are going to be like as we get 3-4 games into this thing and people start going and attacking him off of him and players off of things that was said and actions that were displayed early on in the season when things were.
I don't know. Deion's always been able to hold his own in a press conference. So I think he'll do just fine. And I think it's something else to point out if you're a Colorado fan, as you were pointing out in a previous segment, whereas USC and some of these other schools are going to the Big Ten, which is going to become the SEC of the North. I mean, the Big Ten is going to be a monster conference. I think Colorado's going in a good direction. The Pac-12 right now is a very tough conference. If this conference stayed together, I'd argue it'd be one of the better ones in college football.
Right.
They're going to the Big 12, and Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. There's an opening there. I mean, there's no blue blood program in the Big 12.
Yeah, so I think they could, and he's going to recruit. He's going to get the guys he needs in there, so they could make some noise in the Big 12. It's just you're going to have to battle the media along the way. All right, Emil, this looks like a good time for us to go jump into the picks. As much as I would hate for the recap to pop up, we got to do it. I loved it when I was winning. I got to take it.
Here's how we're going to do it this week. I'm going to give you the recap. You're going to start in college. I'll give you my college. Then let's talk about some of the games we perhaps don't pick, or if we have comments on each other's picks. There's a lot of competitive, I'll put it that way. It's a good college slate this week in terms of there's some games with some good matchups. Last week, you were just due. We talked about this a little bit. Chad was so hot, it was incredible. But last week he had his first washout of the year in college. He went 0-3. Now to give the
first losing week, it comes at an.
Let me give the fans some perspective here. Going into last week, he was 15-3. statistically, you got to have some normalization here. You got it all in 1 week though. So you're 15-6 on the year, which is still 71% if I'm doing my math correct in my
Well, that's
head.
what you're here for, Mr. Accountant.
Yes. So 3 losers. Kansas, no good. Then you came in with Texas Tech. You believed in them. They let you down.
Yes, they
You went
sure
to the
did.
well. And this is the one that I thought you were going to get lucky on. I looked at the score. It was 24-6 Michigan State late in the third, and I stopped paying attention. I said, oh, Chad's got a loss on that. Lo and behold, I look again. There's 7 minutes left. They're up 3. I'm like, wait, he's going to win this one. And that's
Yeah,
the way it ended, though.
didn't happen. Didn't
So
happen.
you had Rutgers. So you're 0-3. You're 15-6 on the year. So like I said, there's nothing to be ashamed with there. I went the opposite direction this year. I started off slow, and I've had like 4 winning weeks in a row. I was 2-1 again last week. That puts me at 12-9. So for you people who struggle with math, that's 27-15 in college. Your bookie is crying. I had Florida State minus 17.5, easy winner.
Yes.
Arizona plus 8.5. I told you guys I watched Pac-12 after dark. Arizona's a good team. They
This man knows his
Washington.
Pac-12 football. We know that.
Yes. And then my number 2 team, your school, let me down for my 3-0 because I was all over Miami, and I don't know what went on there.
You know,
but it
they
wasn't.
started off this thing strong. They were good in that
Yeah.
first half, and then I don't know what the hell happened there. So,
So you hit us. Go ahead. Hit me with what you got this week.
all right, let's hit it. I'm going to stay in the Big Ten. I like the Big Ten. Indiana, if you just look at it, they're going to take on that Rutgers team that let me down, last week, was it? And so you can call this maybe a revenge pick or whatever you want to call it. Rutgers is 5-2. Indiana is 2-4. If you just sit here and look at the records and say, man, Rutgers 5-2, Indiana 2-4, they're only 5.5-point favorites. Oh man, that's got to be some value. No, it's not. Indiana's 4 losses: Ohio State, Louisville, Maryland, Michigan. 4 very solid football teams. They're at home, and I don't think we've reached this point, Emil, where Rutgers can go laying points on the road. Indiana's solid. They'll play you strong, may not always win, as they have shown you with the 2-4, but they're going to play you strong. And Rutgers is coming off of that emotional come-from-behind win where I try to act like they were ready for the big time, and they really weren't, and they somehow pulled it from a Michigan State who's lost their morale because of all the things going on. I think Rutgers is out of gas when they go to Indiana. They're going to suffer that 3rd loss. Give me Indiana getting the 5.5 at home. Still in the Big Ten, Wisconsin pulled it all together in that offensive extravaganza bonanza they had last week against Iowa, except they didn't win the game. And I can't see right now Wisconsin coming off of a game like that. They had a 3-game win streak stopped and heading out to Illinois and losing to the guys from Illinois. All right. Illinois is just not that team this year. They're underperforming. They have lost 2 of their last 3. They've won 2 out of their last 4. This is just not that team this year. And Wisconsin's coming in hopping mad. They're a small favorite, less than a field goal here. I love this number at 2.5, Emil, because Wisconsin's going to come in here and just out physical Illinois in the way that they, know that they can. We all know about Wisconsin football, and this is 4-2 is a team that's going somewhere versus an Illinois team that really is not. I don't think it will take much for Illinois to kind of just fold their tent up and be like, this is not the season that we thought it was going to be. So give me those guys. And I like the Pac-12. And I know a little bit about Pac-12 football, maybe not as much as my guy here who says he watches Pac-12 after dark. But, Oregon's coming off of the disappointing loss. And I know what odds makers do. They want to make you feel like Oregon's going to come out there with bloodshot red eyes and they're just going to tear up the world. And maybe that will be their attitude. But this is not a Washington State team that you could just go take a dump on. Sure, they've lost back-to-back games, and I really think, Emil, they got surprised by Arizona last week. You picked up on Arizona's new quarterback is somebody to just not be taken lightly, and I think they got surprised and thought they could kind of just cruise into this game. Maybe we come off of UCLA and we're feeling a certain kind of way and we're kind of looking ahead to Oregon and they got caught by surprise. Don't get fooled by those back-to-back losses for Washington State. I am going to take them getting a healthy amount of points against Oregon, who would love to be in another marquee game after losing a game like that to Washington. I just think 18.5 points is wildly disrespectful. And Oregon showed some holes last week that I think Washington State can be able to take advantage of. I love Washington State getting over 2 and close to 3 touchdowns here. Give me Washington State because they're going to be sulking too when they come into this game. So that's
Let me recap. Chad's got his girlfriend dumped him in the first game last week, so he's dating her friend. He's got Indiana plus 5.5 against Rutgers. He's got Wisconsin minus 2.5 over Illinois, and the Washington State Cougars plus 18.5 coming off a big Oregon loss. He thinks that Oregon might be a little flat. I'll tell you before I get to
love
my
Cougars.
picks. Dan Lanning at Oregon, he has some splaining to do, as they used to say on TV sitcoms for last week, because there were some odd decisions that he made.
We're seeing more and more of that, both at the college and the NFL level. It's like, why can't we manage things at the end of the game? That's really a big part of your job as definitely as an NFL coach, because so many games come down to one possession, but also as a marquee college football coach that's getting paid so many millions of dollars. You got to be able to handle those situations. And if it's something that you know personally you're not very good at, you've got enough money in a program like Oregon to hire a guy that would just you have a get back coach that stops you from going out to the numbers and getting a flag or slapping a referee who may or may not deserve it. You got to have another guy there that's a pure numbers guy. We do so much with analytics.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let me give my picks. We'll hit college. When we go to the NFL segment, I've got 2 football math problems that you're talking about right here.
Is Brandon Staley involved in any of them?
I'm going to leave him out. I don't even need him this week, okay? I've got 2 I want you and the audience to hear, and you tell me where I'm wrong. But first, let me hit you with my college picks, okay? Because I'm feeling it this week. First, I'm going big game hunting in the first game. I have Ohio State at home giving 4.5 to Penn State. I got to tell you, early in the year, I told you I thought Penn State would have a good season. I still do. But this is not the spot. Anybody watching Penn State, their offense is very sketchy. They're starting a redshirt freshman quarterback. He might be, I don't know, is he a sophomore? He didn't play much last year behind Sean Clifford, okay? Their offense is limited. They've really dominated defensively and playing a weak schedule. Go down the Penn State schedule. They haven't been tested yet. They've played Illinois, who you're picking against this week. They've played the University of Delaware. They played UMass last week. They dropped one in the polls. I mean, UMass, the 6th game of the year. Come on now, you're in the Big Ten. You're going to Ohio State, and let me tell you, Ohio State has a really good defense, but I think they have more offensive weapons in this game. Do I think it's going to be a blowout? Hell no. I think Penn State's defense is good enough. But I see Ohio State just winning this game by 10 points. 4.5. I'll give 4.5 here. I feel Ohio State's at least a touchdown to 10 points better. Give me the Buckeyes. Next game. I know we talked about it last week. Lane Kiffin had a chance to really step on Nick Saban's head this year and blew it. But I think they got carried away in this game with the point spread. I know Alabama's playing a lot better. You know, the quarterback looks a lot better. But Tennessee's still a pretty good football team. Athletically, they've got some guys. They're grabbing 8.5 points here. I mean, I'll be a sucker. This is a rivalry game. It always has been. It's a big game in the SEC. I'll take Tennessee plus 8.5 here to at least hang around. Alabama's won a couple close games here. They haven't been blowing out good teams. So finally, listen, you know me. I'm a realist. I pick my team when I think they're going to win. I pick against them and root for them. But if I think, and that's what I'm going to be doing Saturday night, I don't see this. To me, if USC beats Utah, it's going to be a really competitive football game. Utah's won the last 2 Pac-12 championships. I think they're lacking offensively this year, but they play defense. And they're going to run and they're going to be physical. And if USC's defense doesn't come to this game ready to stop the run, they're going to be in trouble. And you're giving me 6.5 points in Utah. I just don't see USC blowing out Utah. So I'm going to take Utah plus 6.5.
All right. Recapping things. Ohio State in the big battle in the Big Ten over Penn State. Ohio State's minus 4.5. Tennessee in a big SEC battle. plus 8.5. He's taking them over Alabama. You went after the big games this week, and that's Utah plus 6, or is that 6.5?
6.5.
6.5. We got a hook on that 6 against USC. So all big games here. You guys better love my man Emil. He went big.
Listen, since we're going to cover a few of these games before we hit the NFL, I mean, you don't have to agree. I just want, what are your thoughts on those games? I mean, they're all big games, and you didn't pick them, so.
Um, I'm not sure about the Ohio State thing. I have not been impressed with them this year. This looks like an opponent like Notre Dame, which they struggled with, albeit this game is the game's in Columbus. So
Columbus, yeah.
Yeah, that works for them. So I'm not sure. I this could end up being a field goal game. I think Penn State really feels good about their team this year and being able to hang with an Ohio State. Whereas in years past, they just kind of knew at some point we're gonna get out athleted here. So I think Penn State can keep their head in it the whole way. I wouldn't be surprised either way though if it ended up in an Ohio State blowout or a Penn State win or field goal deciding the game.
Sure.
Tennessee, I just was out on Tennessee after the Florida loss. Just don't know about them being able to handle themselves in these situations. But that's kind of rich, and the way that they can score points when they want to, when they're flowing, and I think they can get up for an Alabama team. There's a good chance that they can hang within.
There's a different formula at Alabama right now. They're playing defense and kind of not letting their offense beat them. I mean,
it's early Saban at Alabama
yes,
type football they're going back to. So yeah, Alabama might dominate this game and only win it by 3 or 4 points. So yeah,
right.
I'm cool with that. And then this Utah pick is so clean, the number's so not what I thought it would be, that it scared me away from it. But Utah is definitely the better side here. I guess the only thing that could potentially happen is USC is that mad, but they're just not good, as we talked about early on, in the areas where your anger would show up and do something about it. You're not in the trenches, very physical. Your defense has given up 40 plus in 3 straight games, and you're getting into the meat of that schedule. So I'm scared for them. And I think, Utah is probably a good play here.
Yeah. And, I look at that game too, as you talk about expectations, and I think when the media builds this program up like that, it's a college football playoff opponent potentially. And let's be honest, last year, if they won either one of those Utah games, they were in the playoff. If they won the first one, even if they lost the Pac-12 championship game, they were in the playoff. And if they won the Pac-12 championship game, they were in the playoff. So they came into this year fully expecting to be a playoff participant. And after last week, the only way that could happen is they'd literally have to run the table. They'd have to win every game, and that would include beating Oregon or Washington 2 times. So I worry USC comes into this game with kind of like feeling, even though it's not really flushed, that their season is flushed.
Yeah, there's a chance that could happen. So
yeah.
There you have it.
So let me ask you a couple games before we hit the NFL. A team you liked early in the year, and great job. I mean, I didn't see this, so that's why you're smarter than me at this college football stuff. You really like Duke, and I remember the opening game against Clemson. You really liked them. They're getting 13.5 points this week against Florida State. Florida State's ranked 4th in the country. What do you see there? I know you're not making an official pick, but
I'm obviously concerned about the quarterback situation. It's a big part of why I really, really loved Duke. After that Clemson game, I came into the season knowing that they play really good defense and they're solid offensively. It's not a situation where they undo stuff that the defense does. But seeing what they had at quarterback really made me fall in love with them. So I'm not sure what the situation is there. If we're talking point spread wise, though, I don't think it will matter whether their starting quarterback is in the game or not. I just think Duke can play well enough defensively, do enough what they do offensively to keep this thing nip and tuck all the way through. And you've got a Florida State team that's going to be a little bit big-headed coming in here off of the 41-3 win. That doesn't do wonders for being motivated for a Duke football team that is, I think, right now still hard for people to take seriously, both fans and opponents. So there's a chance you might catch Florida State napping here a little bit as they kind of think down the road past Duke, even though everything in the numbers and on the schedule says you shouldn't do that. I think Duke can stay inside of that number. It's 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I think at this point in the season, I'm starting to feel Florida State's a little overranked.
Yeah, I mean,
I
because we're giving weight to the LSU win early on in the year, and LSU.
Yeah, and I think they got a lot of mileage out of that and haven't been penalized for the poor games they've played since. The BC game, terrible. They didn't play well. Even the Clemson game, to be honest with you, yeah, they made the plays when they had to, but they didn't control the game
Right, easily could have lost.
easily. And before we hit the NFL, last one I want to ask you: your school, you got the hat on. I like the visor. They're playing Clemson. Do you have any feel for that? Not even point spread wise. Do you think Miami can win the game?
Definitely feel like they're going to win. That they can and will win the game. I will be in attendance, and I'm sure the atmosphere will be real nice there at Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday night. You look at the final score of the North Carolina game and you say, gosh, they were outmatched, but that's not necessarily what happened. You look at it, the teams were evenly matched. Just, this is all part of the morphing process into coming from where you were into what I think this program and team will be down the road. It's just sometimes you just don't finish games the way that you need to, or things unravel in a game and you don't respond the way that you need to. Obviously, if you'd been winning, you'd played for championships and had been wildly successful in years past, you probably handle some of those adversities you face in the North Carolina game differently. But this is all part of the process of getting there. Now you're at home, you're against a Clemson team who may look at that score last week and have a hard time being in the right mental place. I think Miami will be. There'll be a good atmosphere. It's a night game in the city of Miami. Sure, it's not the Orange Bowl, but you can get a pretty good atmosphere at night there, especially when you get an opponent like Clemson showing up. I think buoyed by that, if I could use that word, and having the talent and a little bit of determination now to kind of put a halt to a 2-game losing streak. I like my school against Clemson. Did you think I'd say anything else?
I like them bounce back, but again, I'm a little bit of a homer on the pick. I will say I think this game will determine each team's season and what it ends up. I think if Clemson wins this game, they have a couple big games coming up like Notre Dame, where Clemson could go on and have a really nice year, regardless of whether they win the conference or not. Playing a nice bowl game and have a good season. Same thing for Miami. They're 4-2. I think a win over Clemson. Then you got Florida State coming up. You can still have a really impressive season. So I think this is like a fork in the road game for both teams. And I would expect Miami to come out and defend the home turf and win this game. And I hope that's not the fan of me saying that.
Yeah, and for what you just mentioned there, this is going to be a war. This is two teams sitting there with 2 losses and figuring they can't really afford a third in terms of what we were trying to accomplish coming into this season. Definitely not for Clemson, who's enjoyed the ultimate success within the last 5-6 years in the program. Now you're going into, you're losing 3 games and plus for a second straight year. That could be problematic for them. And then Miami, you had the Georgia Tech loss, and you had some pretty big expectations coming into the season that were fueled by a 5-0 start, and now you have these back-to-back losses. I agree with you. It is a fork in the road game.
Okay, so now before we get to our NFL picks, because our audience has stayed here with us for quite a while, and they can go to Bovada, show sponsor, and they can put all these picks in and collect money, hopefully, like we've
Yes,
been doing for them all year. I got
that is the
two
hope.
football strategy math problems for you. Okay, I'll start off with the first one. Eagles Jets 14-12. The Eagles are leading this game. There's 2 minutes left in the game. Third down. The Eagles are near midfield. The Jets are out of timeouts. Okay. So you're on the ball. Let's say the play takes 5 seconds. Now there's 40 seconds off the clock. And you call a timeout if you're the Eagles. So you don't take a 5-yard penalty even. And then you punt the ball. Ball goes up, lands, rolls around. Another 10 seconds. So I just went 10, 40, and 5. That's 55 seconds. The Jets, best case, if I kick it in the end zone, they have to go from their own 20 to at least the 35. In a minute 5, they have to move 45 yards with no timeouts, and Zach Wilson, who we talked about extensively as their quarterback. If my punter really does a good job, maybe he puts him at the 10. Okay. Why am I throwing the ball on third down, which for fans who didn't see the game, The pass was picked off, returned, and then the Jets, by the way, being the Jets, foolishly scored a touchdown and gave the Eagles
Easily,
another
as the Eagles
chance.
seemingly allowed them to run it in.
Yeah, because all the Jets had to do was take a knee and kick a 27-yard field goal to win the game.
It was an odd choice, Emil. I don't know how much ego fuels some of these things. It was an odd choice by Philadelphia, and it cost them dearly. And coaches aren't getting away with these things apparently this year. This is the year.
Is my math or strategy wrong? I mean, I'm looking at this going, maybe if it's Aaron Rodgers on the other end and he only needs a field goal, I'm not going to roll the dice because Aaron Rodgers, we've seen him with a minute 5. He can cover 45 yards like that. Okay. If that's the case, maybe I'm going to end the game at that point, figuring I trust my guy more than I trust my defense to hold Rodgers, from kicking a field goal. But with Zach Wilson, and no offense, he's playing a lot better. I'll take my chances that Zach Wilson.
I agree with you, Emil. I think maybe a common denominator in a lot of these situations is it's a very good team against a team that they should beat and beat handily. And perhaps that plays into the decision a little bit. Sure, you're Philadelphia. You're not trying to score to add on to the score for it to look better. But it's like, man, do I even want to play this run out the scoreboard type of deal with you? I think some of that might play into it. And
you're saying they're disrespecting their opponent.
Yes,
really
exactly. Yeah, and the long and short of it is that you're disrespecting your opponent, similar to the University of Miami running the ball at the end of the game. We were supposed to blow these guys out. We're 21-point favorites. And so we're not going to play the happy to win the game thing. I think when you're an older coach, an older, more experienced team, you are more understanding of how hard it is to win games, even in college football, against a team when the odds makers or the public says you should by 21. Well, who are you guys? Who are you guys to say that? On any given Saturday, a team could rise up. We could be coming off of something emotional and easy, and we're not at our best. We're only 21 points better than a team if we're at our best. And sometimes you're just not at your best. And so be happy with a victory. And I think that's phenomenal.
The other quick one, for those who didn't watch, the Giants had a 9-7 lead. They led much of the game against the Bills on Sunday night. So the Bills score. I want to say there's a minute left in the game to make it 13-9. So quickly, I can't draw X's and O's for you, but I can do math. I say you got to go for 2, right? Because 13-9 doesn't really matter whether it's 13 or 14-9. Sure. There's no he doesn't even think about it. The kicker comes on, kicks the extra. I go, what are you doing? If you make the 2 when it's 15-9 and the Giants score, at least their kicker, and we've seen many of these missed, has to make a 32-yard extra point to beat you.
Right.
He kicks the extra, it's 14-9. Well, lo and behold, the Giants somehow end up on the Bills' 1-yard line for an untimed down at the end with a chance to win the game. And I'm saying, I hope these son of a bitches score because I don't understand. You have all the resources in the world. Have a geek stand next to you and go,
that's what I said.
Coach.
If this is not your strong suit, admit to it. And you have a guy there from MIT. If that's what you need.
I'll do it. Pay me expenses. Give me a field pass.
Well, fine. Give me a guy from Hofstra. Whatever you got to do. But hire a guy, for God's sakes. He could even.
Am I looking at this wrong? Am I being too hard on him? Or is that just.
Absolutely. You go up 6. I mean.
It's not hard. Okay, listen. Enough with that. Hit me with your NFL picks. First, let me give the fans the accounting of last week. Chad, you were 1-2. This was not good last week.
No.
You're 12-6 though on the year. That's very good.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, you had a loser with the Bears, a winner with the Texans, and the Buccaneers, man. They were, what a downer that was.
Yeah, they blew it for me, man. What can I say?
Now I came at everybody. I gave everybody the Washington Commanders plus 2.5. They got the outright there at Atlanta, right? Then I had the Jets +7. I thought that line was a little rich. The Eagles have not dominated teams this year. I didn't think the Jets would win outright, but I figured this would be another close game. And then finally, I went against my Cowboys Monday night. I got 2.5 points with the Chargers. The Cowboys, I have to say, impressed me in that they dug deep. I thought that 49er game would keep them down a little longer than it did. It wasn't the cleanest game I've ever seen them play, but on the road coming off that embarrassing loss to San Francisco, they showed me more than I thought they would. So I took a loss there. I'm 2-1 on the week. I sit at 11-7. You sit at 12-6. Again, 23-13. You don't have a happy bookie. So hit me with your picks.
I think we're cool. We're killing it in that regard. All right, they screwed me over last week. I'm going to give them another shot here. I'm going to come back with Tampa Bay off of the division. Well, now see, I'm going back in time. Not the division loss, but they're coming in off of the embarrassing loss at home to Detroit, 20-6. Emil, I can hardly think and believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this will tell me a lot about who they actually are this season. If they come in a second week at home off of that embarrassing loss and piss all over the place when the Atlanta Falcons are coming down, this is a divisional game, something they need to get themselves together for. And the last time they had an embarrassing loss, which was a couple of weeks ago against the Philadelphia Eagles, they came back and had a surprising blowout win over the New Orleans Saints. So I think that might be the mindset for the Tampa Bay Bucks this year. We'll get it together after we lose. So losing 20-6 at home to Detroit, they come back. They're playing Atlanta, who I don't have a whole lot of. I'm not neither here nor there with Atlanta. They've got Desmond Ridder at quarterback, and he's all over the place. Atlanta is 1-3 in their last 4 games. I don't like them on the road here, even though they lost to Washington last week. I just think this is a really bad spot for them. So give me the Bucks at 2.5-point favorites. The Ravens are back home after suffering a disappointing loss last week. I think this is a good opportunity for them to get back on the schneid against a good football team, because that's kind of what you need after, well, they didn't lose last week. They were out in London. Let me just say that. And sometimes I fret over a team coming back from across the pond, but I just think Baltimore is a solid football team, especially at home. And Detroit might be getting a little too big for their britches. I will say this, Emil, if I lose this pick fading Detroit here, I think this might be my second or third loss with the Lions, and I might have to put them on the list. I did get a win over them earlier this year by taking the Seahawks, but I just think this is a little rich for Detroit. They should probably be bigger underdogs here. They're going to come in here with their heads swell after the impressive win on the road versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I hardly see them doing that and then following that up with an upset win over the Ravens in Baltimore. So that's how I see that one going. Oh, hold on. I think I got someone here for the final pick. Let's see who we got here. Hey, Mo, how you doing? Absolutely. Yeah. Done it 2 times here. And of course, as always, the pleasure is all yours. I'm here with my book, Emil. The last time I showed up here, not only did I collect from a couple of guys that owed me some cheese, but I came and I brought you guys a winner. And seeing as though the host of this thing over here on this side couldn't get his act together last week and dealt you guys, what are we talking about here? A 1-2 performance? This guy should be pushing up some daisies somewhere, putting out some stuff like that. So you know what? This time I invited myself in here to help out both the host, you, and anyone else here that's watching this, and come to you with a winner. Sunday, we got the Miami Dolphins. And I love Miami. There's a lot of sun. There's a lot of stores where I can go collect a little bit of, my VIG off of. But, a lot of old folks down there that you can take advantage of. And I love the Miami Dolphins, but I don't like them in this situation against my guys out there in Philly. I got a lot of friends over there in the Philadelphia area, and I really like the Eagles. Now, the quarterback, the Hurts guy, has been hurt. Okay, he's not been up to snuff. Even with that being the case, they're still only got 1 loss this year. And I really cannot see the Philadelphia Eagles, the guys that were in the Super Bowl, and it was this close to winning a game, coming back and losing back-to-back games. Now, I know the Dolphins are high flying.
If he hurts, if he throws 2 or 3 picks, would you consider hurting Hurts?
I think Hurts will be missing for the next game if he comes out here and he shits the bed once again. Pardon my language there for all of the young ladies watching the program. But I'm telling you this right now. With these guys at home laying less than a field goal, I feel a little bit of disrespect right there. You know what I'm saying? I think they should be bigger favorites than this. These Dolphins, I think they got figured out when they went up to Buffalo. You know what I mean? So I think the Eagles can go out, play a little bit of defense, play defense the way that I think the Buffalo Bills did, only do it better this time. You know what I'm saying? And I think they have what they need to put the Dolphins under the ground. Okay, you know what I'm saying? I know they swim around in the water, but I think the Dolphins go on the ground.
Put them in the ground, huh?
And yeah, you ever seen a dolphin on land? They don't do too good.
They
And
don't
this,
do
as
that.
far as I know, is going to be on land. This thing ain't
They,
being played in
they
water.
might get hit with something
I
in
got the
Philadelphia.
yeah, that might be the case. But I got the Eagles soar and fly high because Donnie 2 times says so. And by the way, my cousin Anthony that works in the casinos, he's got a good line here. He's telling me all the wise guys are on the Eagles. And once again, who am I to go against a wise guy? That's how you end up in the back of a trunk tied up and put in a Ziploc bag. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm going to go with the Eagles on this one. 2.5-point favors. Is that the line? That better be the
So
line.
2 times. Is this like a group project this week? So you and your friend there, the
Yeah.
host, that you got the Bucks -2.5.
No. Don't
No.
put. I'm telling you right now. I'm the Eagles pick. That other stuff he went with, that's on him.
Okay. Your friend's got the Eagles -2.5. He's got the Ravens -3. And you have the Philadelphia Eagles -2.5.
Donnie 2 times. Where the pleasure's all yours. Has the Eagles -2.5. Is that
Well,
what?
I'm going to give my picks. Can you get the host back?
I'm gonna
when
go see
doing
if I
this?
can find a guy.
Find him.
He's still crying over that 1-2, 1-5.
Yeah, find him. I'm going to give my picks now, okay?
I'm gonna let you know something. He goes 1-5 again, ending up in this book right here.
He'll be in the book. Okay, well, there we go. We got his picks. So let me give you mine. Okay, here we go. I'm on the same team that my friend, not 2 times, my co-host Chad, who's back. I'm on the Ravens -3. I feel like this is a game where the Lions are going to play a legitimate top 5 or 6 defense in the Ravens on the road. And again, I like Detroit. I like what they're doing. I think they're legitimately a good team. I just don't think it's a great spot for the Lions. I'm on the Ravens as well, -3. Another team I think this year has surprised me playing much better than what I expected, and they're well coached, is the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay is doing a great job there because this team was not highly regarded coming into the year. They're 3-3. The Steelers, while they play great defense, may be the worst 3-2 team I've seen in a while. I mean, you want to talk about an offensively challenged football team. It's the Steelers. And I just feel like this is a situation where the Rams are home. They have a road game in Dallas next week. They really, they need this game. They won last week. I think they get a little momentum here. I know the Steelers are coming off a bye. I just don't like what I see offensively from the Steelers. And I think McVay's smart enough to scheme something up, and he has a veteran quarterback that's not going to hand the Steelers a game like the Ravens did a couple of weeks ago, essentially just imploding in the second half of that game with turnovers. So I like the Rams -3. Finally, I'm going with the team, not because I necessarily love things they do, but anybody who's followed the Chargers for a couple of years now, especially this year, every game they play is close. They've played 5 one-score games this year. They're 2-3, but they're getting 5.5 at Kansas City. I have a feeling that number coming off a loss feels like they're almost encouraging you to take Kansas City. I think this is one of those games where the Chargers frustrate their fans again and get beat by a point or 2 or something like that, but they cover the 5.5. Could they win the game? Would I be shocked if the Chargers upset the Chiefs? No, I would not. So I'm going to take the Chargers +5.5.
All right, recapping. He likes the Rams -3 at home. All right. What'd you say there? You think they need the game? They already beat my Arizona Cardinals. Come on.
Yeah, well, they're 3-3. I think the Rams season's going a lot better than a lot of Rams fans expected.
Speaking on that, I think I talked to you about this earlier in telling you that I've been impressed with what the Rams have been able to do up front offensively. Stafford is getting really good protection there, and I think that's really helped them. Kudos to Sean McVay in rebuilding that offensive line because it was a little bit of a disaster last year. I think that's the best thing that they've got going on, and it has allowed them to do a lot of good things. I'm with you. The Steelers are probably as bad a 3-2 football team as there is. They are coming off of a bye week, but it's a bye week off of a divisional win. So mentally, they might not be 100% into it. Obviously, I agree with your Ravens pick because, I have the same pick as well. The Chargers, man, I don't know what we're going to get with them. And, obviously I didn't pick it because I don't know what you get with Chargers games. I was afraid last week. Remember, I was going to take the Chargers along with you, and I was a little afraid. So,
you know what? That's one of those games where the reason I like it, besides just the way the math works, is 2-3 is kind of like a pivotal point in a season in the NFL. There's nothing wrong with 3-3. The NFL is a 500 league. Essentially, you make your move after Thanksgiving, but 2-4 feels a lot different. And they may very well be 2-4 when it's over, but I think that you're gonna get max effort because they know where their season's at. You know what I mean? It can go in a couple directions. You upset Kansas City, it's a springboard, and maybe your season takes off. You go out here and lay an egg, and you're starting to think, where am I going to be drafting?
yeah, definitely a pivotal game for them. And like I said, I don't disagree or agree. I just don't know where to go with the Chargers. This week will probably tell me a lot about what's going on. So,
I'll tell you, that's a team where it's very hard. You and I, we've roasted this guy, but I just don't understand Staley. I don't get him.
stubborn, just a stubborn individual, and we'll see how much leeway that gets him if things go sideways here. But that's it for us, man. We talked you into the dark. Guy had to go cut the lights on. So, but we're happy. We're happy to do that here for you each and every week. We recap last week. We took you into the future with the picks. I listen. I plan on making a really big comeback with these picks. You've been solid over the last few weeks, so we see how that goes. And as always, folks out there, we want to thank you for coming in and joining us here on the Two Chumps Football Podcast. We want you guys to enjoy all the football games this weekend. Everything on Saturday, a couple of really big games and some very interesting NFL games coming up. So we want you guys to enjoy that. And we'll be right back here again next week, ready to recap all of the action and look into the future for what would be week 8 as we fly through both the NFL and the college football season. So, on behalf of Emil Calomino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for listening and watching the Two Chumps Football Podcast. We're out.